And wow, I'm very, very humbled. You know, there's
Cumpleaños feliz.
calling from the north countries of Petersburgo, Здравствуйте, Russia, you know, hola, para la gente in Mexico, Satyabama Didi, and there's Vrindavan Chandra in Odessa, and R.M. Das, I'm not sure where he's calling from, but, and there's Vrajasundari lighting a little candle. Thank you, Vrajasundari, that's very nice. Actually, I'm 68.
Oh,
so you have to carry a lot of candles.
Mahayogi Prabhu, please look on what Harimati did for you specially today.
Harimati
did it. Yes, Harimati did.
Hello, it's Prabhuji.
Well, there she is. She has a cake. Oh
yes.
My God.
Happy appearance day to you.
Thank you so much.
This is the cake with 18 candles. I hope you are 18 years old for sure.
Yeah,
and we have
always 18.
Yeah,
sure.
It's probably...
feliz.
And we have 18 chapters in Bhagavad-Gita, so happy appearance day to you.
Yay!
Yes, Maharaj, 18 and 50 years is just zero. You're only 18, actually.
Yes.
Well, let's hope we
lose this 5 and actually it's just zero. It's 18.
Yes.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Like maybe this age you met Prabhupada. Maybe, I don't know.
You're all very kind.
You have to blow the candles.
Here we go.
Happy birthday.
A little pranayam here. I make my magic energy ball and feel the energy, and then
Rajasundari pin Harimati so we can see it.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. Yes, perfect.
Wow.
Perfect, yes.
And how you gonna do it by internet?
Well, you have
because
a big...
this is Mahayogi Prabhu. This is transcendental energy.
Wow.
Wow.
So maybe let's sing.
Yes.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday
to you.
Happy birthday, Mahayogi Prabhu. Happy birthday to you.
Nitai Gaura Haribol.
Haribol. Hare Krishna.
That's very beautiful, boys and girls. Well, actually, someone sent me some donations, and with my donations, I did something very terrible and decadent. I bought myself a harmonium. So I'm going to sing a little Hare Krishna for you. Okay, but I don't know how these microphones are going to work, but you guys can try to accompany me and we'll do a little bit of kirtan.
Yay!
Bhajan, I guess it is. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Now you. Hare Here comes the high part. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare So there you go. Hare Krishna to you. Well, I'm just practicing. That's my first time, but I used to play the harmonium a long time ago. I know it's not necessarily the thing in the temple, but it's hard for me to sing unaccompanied, and it's sort of nice to have that. Anyways, that's my birthday wish and benediction to you. Hare Krishna to you. And it's nice that, I don't know, we're an international group. There's Prithu Das and Satyabhama and Morelia, Harimati and Dandi Maharaj, Pranashish of the Emerald Isle, publisher of SOS Press, publisher of the Premadama Stotram. All right, so, I thought I could chant the shlokas of the Bhagavad-Gita like that, So we're supposed to be continuing with our reading of the 6th chapter of Bhagavad-Gita, and if it's all right, I think I'll start without any more. The Hare Krishna mantra is enough of a Mangala Acharan, right? So we have this conversation between the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and his warrior friend Arjuna, who's confused about how to act. And of course, Arjuna in this scenario represents all of us. Many people feel like Arjuna did not really need the instructions because he's already a realized soul, being part of the Nitya Leela of Sri Krishna. He's only acting as a stand-in for us because Atato Brahma Jigyasa, in the sense that we're human beings and we've been through many different lives, it's time for us to ask, why are we here? What is the purpose of life? And so Arjuna essentially is asking these questions, and Krishna begins with the ontological understanding of the Atma and the Paramatma in the second chapter. And in the third chapter, he discusses about the need for giving something back. In order to understand our place in the universe, we have to give something back to God. We call this jagya, or sacrifice. And when Arjuna wants to know more about that, then Krishna explains to him that it's necessary to have some Atma Gyan, or transcendental wisdom, to really become perfect in sacrificial acts as they're recommended in the Vedas. And in the fifth chapter, he explains that this system of karma yoga, or nishkama karma yoga, is really the same as sannyas, or renunciation, in the sense that you're renouncing the fruits of your action. I had a very strange personal experience along these lines. I had to renew my passport. I want to visit Pranashish in Ireland, and Dandi Maharaj and my friends in Ukraine. So I need to renew my passport, which runs out in January. But now on the form, there's a new requirement where you have to put your social security number. And this is a number assigned by the government so that people can pay their taxes. It's a confidential number. Now they want to use that to identify you and link your travel and your passport with your financial movements and your payment of taxes. So I had a problem with this, and I called the office. They were very nice people. They said, if you go to your local passport place, your consulate, you talk to the boss, the number one, the manager there, and they'll call me here at this office. So I did that. It was like a James Bond movie. I walk into the office, I give them my name, and then after half an hour, the boss comes out from the back, and he has a cell phone in his hand, and he says, "Talk to the man." And I said, "Is this the man?" He goes, "I'm the man." I said, "All right, can you identify yourself?" "Yes, my name is," and I gave him my name. And he says, "Okay, there's a discrepancy here. Have you ever used another name?" And I said, "Well, yes, Mahayogi." "Oh, that explains a lot of things, because we couldn't give you the number before." I said, "Yes, I know my number was blocked, you know." He said, "Well, tell me something about yourself, because we have some questions." And I said, "Well, what's the problem?" He says, "Well, your numbers are blank. You're off the grid. There's nothing for you." And I said, "Well, okay. When I was 21 years old, I joined a religious organization as a volunteer. And we don't believe in making any money. We don't believe in a profit. That's what Krishna says in the Bhagavad-Gita. He says, you know, karmani evadikaraste mapaleshu kadashna. You're not entitled to the fruits. So I did my work as a volunteer for the Hare Krishna movement for about 20 years. And after that, now I work in rural Mexico as a teacher. And I don't really make any money. I make enough to support myself. But here in Mexico, they don't ask me to send tax information. And the guy said, "Oh, really? that explains it. Do you have a pencil? I said, yes, I do. Okay, write down this. I can't send you your number by email because it's confidential. Write down this number, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oh, okay. And I wrote it down, my passport information right through. But the consul of the United States of America is standing there listening to me. She's going, what? You work without any profit? How is that possible? How old are you? I said, well, I'll be 68 tomorrow. Oh, well, happy birthday to you, Mr. And they stamped my application and through it went, but we are very unusual people in that we actually believe that it's possible to dedicate yourself to God. And a lot of people talk about dedicating themselves to God, but they're not willing to give up 20, 30, 40 years of profit from their work. Everyone wants to profit from their work. So anyways, Krishna tells Arjuna, if you're giving up the profit from your work, it's the same as sannyas. There's no difference between renouncing the world and renouncing the objects of the senses and the profit that you make from your work. Sannyas, of course, is a very difficult path because you're really throwing yourself into the infinite. And you're saying, I don't care what happens to me. I believe in Krishna. And I lived like that for some years. When I went to Sripad Maharaj, I was desperate. And he gave me initiation into the Gayatri Mantra. And I had a ticket back to Los Angeles, California by air. But my friend at the time was Aranya Maharaj. He was Kashi Ram Das Brahmachari. Sridhar Maharaj didn't like the name Kashi Ram because Kashi Ram was the author of a particular version of Mahabharata in Bengal, which has a bit of an impersonal slant. So he gave him the name Bhakti Kishore Aranya Maharaj. And so we both have tickets back to Los Angeles. And Aranya Maharaj says, well, I'll tell you what, let's get off the airplane in London. And I said, we can do that? He said, yeah, the plane to Los Angeles goes through the transit lounge, but we just walk out of the transit lounge into London. I said, well, then what do we do there? Oh, we'll go to the temple in London. Okay. So I had no money. I said, but isn't it cold in London in the wintertime? This was December. And he said, no, it's normal. It's okay. I said, but I remember reading Charles Dickens, and they had snow. No, don't worry about it. So we got off the plane in London, and I didn't have any shoes. I just had sandals. I had 2 dhotis, 2 kirtas, a pair of sandals, and some books. A little bar of tilak. That was pretty much it. Maybe I had like $20, but I got off the plane. He said, I'll meet you there. And he took a taxi to the temple. And I took a bus to downtown London. And when I got out the bus, there was 3 feet of snow everywhere. It was actually the worst blizzard since Napoleon invaded Russia. And my feet were freezing because I was walking along in sandals. So I found a shoe store there, and the cheapest shoes they had were like house slippers. I think I paid $5 for them. And after walking about 20 feet in the snow, the house slippers just fell apart. But somehow I took the metro. They call it the metro, right? The underground. I took the underground to the temple on Soho. And there the devotees met me. And from there we went to Bhaktivedanta Manor. And Krum Court at the time was a big palace that was owned by the devotees. And because Jayatirtha Maharaj was favorable, he was going to help us. But we stayed there for about 2 months. And I had to leave because the people there did not want to hear much about Sridhar Maharaj for different, political reasons. So they said, go to South Africa. And so I said, well, who's in charge there? What do I do? They said, don't worry, go to South, Jayatirtha Maharaj gave me a ticket. So I went to the airport and I looked up the address in the Bhakti Godhead magazine. And I tried to call the temple, but there was no answer. And then they said, no, boarding on gate 7 for Johannesburg. So I flew to John Smuts Airport in Johannesburg. And again, maybe I had $50, maybe it was $100. It was an insignificant amount of money. I arrived at the airport there and showed the Bhakti Godhead magazine address to somebody. And they said, ooh, that's way out. You should take a bus. So I took a bus out into the middle of nowhere. And now I'm looking at farms and fields and country roads. And so I walked down the street and knocked on a door. And a man answered the door, what do you need? And I told him, well, I'm trying to find this address. He said, okay, jump in the truck. And he had a truck and he drove around for about 2 hours trying to find the address. He couldn't find it. And finally he thought, well, try this place over here. And he dropped me off. Now it's nighttime, and I have a little bag with 2 dhotis and 2 kirtas and a little bar of tilak and my Bhagavad-Gita. And I walk into this walled courtyard. It's a garden. And suddenly there's 3 dogs there. There was a Doberman Pinscher, a German Shepherd, and a Rottweiler, big dog. And as soon as I crossed the gate, the dogs are going like that, like they're going to eat me. And I knocked on the door, and the farmer answered the door, and he said, what do you need? And I told him. And he drew a blank. He was like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And finally, his wife came and said, oh, wait a minute. Those people who sold us the house, I think they were weird. They were like vegetarians or something. I don't know. They belonged to a cult. Oh, yeah, right. What was his name? Mahatma. Wait a minute. I think we have the number. And they called the temple, and they'd moved the temple into the city. But they let me, they're very nice people. They let me spend a night, and the next day they drove me into the city, a place called Houghton, where they had the latest version of the Hare Krishna temple. My point is, I had no idea what I was doing. It was an incredibly stupid thing to do, in a way, right? But I believed in what I was doing. I believed that Krishna would protect me. And that's one of the different principles of surrender. Not just having a vague idea that, yeah, Krishna is going to protect me, but actually throwing yourself into the infinite. And that's what sannyas is and was. And that's why Sridhar Maharaj, you'll see that in his day, something like 60 or 70 people took sannyas from Sridhar Maharaj because we all believed in him, So in this 5th chapter, Krishna says, renunciation and working without expecting anything back for your work. that's really kind of the same thing. But Arjuna wants more. He wants to go deeper. He wants to understand, well, what's the state of mind of a yogi? You talk about this yoga, that yoga. Let me understand this yoga more deeply. So Krishna begins his discussion in the 6th chapter by talking about the mind and how to control the mind. And he says, one must deliver himself with the help of his mind and not degrade himself. The mind is the friend of the conditioned soul and the enemy as well. And it's interesting here because the word for mind is atma. Udared atmanat manam, not manam, avasadayat, atmaiva, yatmano bandur, atmaiva ripur, atmana. Repeats the word atma like 8 times. Because the word atma means the self, but sometimes we think of the self in terms of mind, body, intellect, and soul. So Prabhupada says one must deliver oneself with the help of the mind and not degrade himself. The mind is your friend and your enemy as well. So your mind is your friend when your mind guides you in terms of faith. When your mind says, faith is okay, you can believe, go ahead and surrender, you will be protected, then the mind is your friend. When the mind says, oh, look at this, hey, he's got balloons. I just noticed the balloons. Thank you for the balloons. You know, the mind is your friend when the mind says, okay, be Krishna conscious. It's okay to be, don't mind what your family says, or your brother, or your sister, or your aunt, or even your wife, or your children. Maybe your children think you're crazy. That's crazy old, Krishna Das. He still believes in Krishna. What can we do about him? Don't worry about that. Surrender. That's Krishna says, Bandur atmat manastasya, janat maivat manajita, anatmanastu shatrudve, varte tat maiva shatruvat. So the word shatru is enemy. And Arjuna is a warrior, so he understands this talk about enemies. He says, for one who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So a lot of times we think about mind control, but mind control should be an internal affair. We're responsible for our own mind. Don't try to control the mind of other people and say, well, Prabhu, you're on the mental platform. You need to control your mind. Do this, do that. If your help is required, then be a friend and help people. But we know from treating alcoholics and addicts of all different kinds, you can't help someone who doesn't want help. Prabhupada used to say, it's very difficult to awaken a man who's pretending to be asleep. If you're asleep and you know you have to get up at 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning, and your friend calls to wake you up, then you're ready to go. You wake up immediately. But if you don't want to wake up, no amount of shaking from your friend is going to help you. So if someone's addicted to drugs or they're an alcoholic, you can take their bottle away, give them a lecture, lock them in a room. None of that will work until they make the decision themselves. So Krishna is talking about the Atma, the self. Everyone has to try to find their own path towards Godhead, towards surrender. We could try to help our God brothers, but we do not belong to a monolithic kind of mind control cult where it's our business to control other people's minds. Control your own mind, work on yourself. Sridhar Maharaj said that again and again. Govinda Maharaj said that again and again. Don't spend your time finding fault with your friends and your God brothers. Find fault with yourself. Jesus Christ said that. His birthday is coming up. He said, don't look for the little tiny splinter in someone else's eye. Look for the beam, the big chunk of wood in your own eye. But Krishna says, for one who has conquered the mind, the super soul is already reached, for he has attained tranquility. To such a man, happiness and distress, honor and dishonor are all the same. So that means we don't worry about external things. When the mind is misled by the external illusory energy, one becomes entangled in material activities. Therefore, as soon as one's mind is controlled through one of the yoga systems, one should be considered to have already reached the destination. So then again, this chapter in the Gita, I was asked to give a summary. Basically, it's called Dhyana Yoga. It's the yoga of meditation. And normally when we hear that, we think of the meditation system of Patanjali, which has 8 different branches. There's yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyana, and samadhi. So, in a sense, we're more interested in samadhi, which means absorption in the Supreme. And we find absorption in the Supreme through the 9 different kinds of surrender or devotional service: Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, Atma. What is it? Help me out. Right? Shravanam, Kirtanam, Vishnu, Smaranam, Padasevanam, right? Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakyam, Atmanivedanam, right? There's these 9 processes of devotional service. And for us, Sakyam, Dasyam, Atmanivedanam, that really, you're really talking about Vaikuntha or Vrindavan. Dasyam is Vaikuntha, Ayodhyam. Who's the symbol of Dasyam? Hanuman. Atmanivedanam, the symbol of that is really the gopis. Sometimes they say Bali Maharaj because he gives up everything. He gives up the 3 worlds. That's a more conventional take, but deeper idea is, Gopi Bhav and higher surrender. But we're really more in the Shravanam, Kirtanam, Archanam, Vandanam stage. In other words, deity worship, prayers, hearing about Krishna. The Bhagavad-Gita is the holy word of Krishna. So just by hearing Bhagavad-Gita, you're being bathed in the words of Krishna. That's real Shravanam. Higher Shravanam, the Bhagavatam. Higher still, the Chaitanya Charitamrita. Kirtanam is we get together and we perform the holy name. We chant the name together. We can feel the congregation as it was begun by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Dhyana, in the sense that we understand it, has to do with japa, or the Gayatri mantra. There's dharana and dhyana. Dharana is something like mindfulness, focus, which is interesting. That's a big buzzword nowadays, mindfulness. They talk about meditation and mindfulness. But, dogs are also mindful. So are cats. The dog is mindful. Here comes my master. He's going to knock on the door. Oh, boy. Or, a dog can sit and enjoy the sunset and be mindful about everything that's going on around him. Whereas you and I, maybe we're watching the sunset, but we're thinking about what happened with my passport application, what happened with the rent, where's the money? I like that girl, is she liking me? And thinking about sex, drugs, power, control, all these things distract us from any real meditation. So in some sense, a cat is sometimes more mindful than a human being, because a cat can watch a bird in a tree for hours. But here, in the Vaishnava sense, dharana, it means focus, means the ability to keep in mind the holy name, the teachings of our guru. Right vision, how to see the world. You're looking at the world. Are you seeing, cars and people walking around? Or are you seeing everything is conscious? The people in the cars are conscious. The air is conscious. The birds are conscious. Everything is a conscious living being. Every wave is favorable. It's not that.
Vi ska göra något. Lage hull.
It's not that God is out to get me. I have a pain. I have a problem. Is God out to get me? So the atheists, they say, how is it possible that God is the author of so much suffering? Why does God give us freedom? It's like putting a gun in the hand of a 3-year-old. But this question is very well answered. It's very well rehearsed. A good reference point. If you like this idea, which is kind of an atheist idea, if you want to study that, read The Grand Inquisitor by Dostoevsky. It's one of his great masterworks. He explores a lot of interesting things there. The relationship between God consciousness and social consciousness. Why has God given us freedom? The Grand Inquisitor accuses Jesus. He says, you're a fool. When the devil tempted you in the desert, he said, do a miracle, turn stones into bread. And Jesus told the devil no, or he just simply remained silent. Because if God shows us miracles, then we're forced to believe in him. There's no freedom. There's no free will. And that's not love. If I put a gun to your head and tell you, love me, that's not love, right? If you pay a prostitute for sex, that's not love. She's obligated. So if God obligates us to love him and there's no free will, then there's no love. And then the church tells Jesus, on the other hand, our business is to take stones and turn the stones into bread, and people love us for that. We give them miracles and we force them to believe, and they follow the rules, and they're happy about that. So if you want a very good analysis of free will, the idea of free will. Read the Grand Inquisitor. It's in the Brothers Karamazov by Dostoevsky. It's a very provocative discussion. But our devotion is voluntary. And so dharana, it means keeping the siddhanta in mind and having the proper sort of vision. Dhyan, which is the name of the chapter, Dhyana Yoga, as we understand it in the line of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, that sort of meditation comes by taking the holy name. And taking the holy name should be done avoiding the 10 different offenses to the holy name. So then it comes back to yama and niyama. So these are the eightfold ideas in the yoga system: yama, niyama, asana, pranayam, pratyahara, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. Pratyahara, it means self-abnegation. It means giving up. And yama and niyama, it means following the rules. So, anakulyasya sankalpa, pratikulyasya varjana. Accept what's favorable for devotional service and give up what's unfavorable. Very simple idea. And of course, the real rules of our particular line, someone asked about this the other day, that's found in literature which is called Pancharatra. For example, the Hari Bhakti Vilas or the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. Or then again, the tradition of the Gaudiya Math and our particular line and the instructions of the Guru. But I'd like to come back to the idea of yama and niyama before I sort of go forward and talk about how Krishna discusses that. Let's look at what Rupa Goswami says. He says, Vacho vegam, manasa krodha vegam, jiva vegam, udara pasta vegam, etan vegan yo vishahita dhira sarvam apimam prithivim sa shishyat. So in Rupa Goswami's Upadeshamritam, which is translated as the nectar of instruction, the very first thing he talks about, he doesn't talk about Radharani or the gopis or some very high thing. He has a very practical idea to offer. He says, Vacho vegam, control what you speak. Manasa krodha vegam, and control the mind and anger. And we've talked about this before. Anger is a very important thing to control. And then he says, jiva and udorapasta vegam, all these different vegams. Like the word vega, it means urge, temptation. Like in the United States, there's a place called Las Vegas where everybody can go for all their different sensual urges and temptations. The word vega, it means temptation. So Srila Sridhar Maharaj mentions that Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur was always focused on the basic teachings of the Upadeshamrita of Srila Rupa Goswami, because he felt that the fruits of devotion will come naturally if we can work on these things. So control your speech means speak about Krishna, speak about spiritual things, try to speak the truth, but speak sweetly. And Srila Sridhar Maharaj comments, Pujala Ragapat Gaurava Bange. We keep the Goloka Vrindavan Gokula conception at a very respectable distance on our head. And we go on working in the lower level to try to show respect to the highest thing. We don't venture to enter into the Ujjwala Nilamani and the more confidential literature of Rupa Goswami, because fools rush in where angels fear to tread. Sridhar Maharaj comments that Vacho Vegam, it means the urge to speak. We're always habituated to speak too much. We don't have time to discriminate. We're always talking and talking. But try to consider carefully what you say. Don't abuse the sadhus. Manasa, it means the mental waves. Don't allow the rush of ideas to overtake you and manipulate you. As Krishna's pointing out here, it's very difficult to control the mind. So we accept responsible action and responsible service, and in this way, we can control the mind and senses. Anger is a disaster. I had this experience when I traveled to Petersburg to see Dandi Maharaj, that it was very difficult going through so many airports where they check you and they search your clothing. You have to take off your shoes. They check your papers. They go through your electronics. They check your bags. And then you have to do it all over again and again. And the people who do this are very rude. And I found myself becoming angry. But at one point, I thought, well, what if I don't get angry? I'm gonna try not to get angry with anybody, not even mentally. I'm not gonna think, why are these people wasting my time? I'm gonna do this as an exercise. And I'll try it for 24 hours. And I was amazed that there were many occasions for me to become angry, but I made this decision. I'm not going to be angry. There's no point in it. And I managed to go for about 22 days without feeling any anger at all. And I was really surprised. Finally, I was working on some project in Thailand with Dandi Maharaj, who was at that time Dinashraya Das Brahmachari. And we were trying to record a film, write a script or something. And one day I just lost it. But it's a very interesting exercise to do. You can try and go 24 hours without being angry with anyone. And if you're successful, make a little green dot on your calendar and then try it again. Sridhar Maharaj comments here that whatever you do, you can offer that to Krishna. So it may be that you can become angry in the service of the Lord. So if someone comes to attack the devotees, you can use your anger against them. Anger is a natural feeling. It's very difficult to control completely. But in the end, it's important to try to control anger. We have in the pastimes of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, when the Kazi and his men came to the house of Srivas Thakur and broke the mridanga, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu became very angry and proceeded to mount a big Sankirtan procession to the house of the Kazi. And people were saying, well, let's burn the house of the Kazi. But in the end, he sat down and had a scriptural discussion with the leader of the Muslims, and everything ended peacefully. So we hope for that. Jiva Vegam means the impulse of the tongue. This is also very difficult to control. And Prabhupada commented that there's a straight line between the tongue, the belly, and the genitals. So these tendencies should be checked. And one who can properly do that is considered to be the Goswami. Then the next verse in the Upadeshnamrita comes, Atyahara prayasascha prajalpo niyamagraha. And then again, there's this word, niyama. So yama means rules, and niyama, it means prohibited things or things that are against the rules. So atyahara, it means to eat or to collect too much, to take too much. In the Ishopanishad, Ishavashyamiram Sarvam, it says, you should accept only what you need. Don't accept more than you need. So eating too much, collecting more than necessary, performing extraneous activities that are against devotional service, prayasa. And then there's prajalpo. And we all love prajalpo. Prajalpo means gossip. It means unnecessary speech that doesn't contribute anything. So if you don't have anything good to say, why speak? Then there's niyamagraha. It means neglecting the injunctions of the scriptures. So we're given certain injunctions. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu doesn't give us too many rules, but he says to his mother that he's very happy that she follows Ekadashi. So by following Ekadashi, you'll find there are many, many different rules and regulations that go with following Ekadashi and the other special days on the calendar. So it's not good for devotional service. Rupa Goswami said, Shadbir Bhaktir Vinashati. These 6 things destroy bhakti. Shadbir Bhaktir Vinashati. Eating too much, collecting more than necessary, doing big projects that are really too much, neglecting the injunctions of the scriptures. And then he says, or blindly following scriptural injunctions, which is odd. It means sometimes we can use scriptural injunctions to justify anti-devotional behavior. And also janasangas means don't associate with materialistic people too much. That won't help you. So these are some different ideas about yama and niyama from a bhakti point of view. So here in the 6th chapter, Arjuna asks Krishna to enlighten him on the path of yoga. And Krishna begins to discuss the nature of Ashtanga yoga, or the Eightfold path of enlightenment, as it was practiced by the ancients thousands of years ago. Now, what we have in the West today mainly focuses on the yoga asanas and the breathing practice known as pranayama. And these things are also helpful for maintaining the body in good health and allowing us to focus. For example, another important aspect of yama and niyama is avoiding negative practices like meat eating, intoxication, gambling, promiscuous sex. All these things distract the mind. And Krishna's already said that your mind can be your friend or your enemy. So these very basic ideas are included in Ashtanga Yoga. And I think I already read some of these verses, so I'm going to move ahead a little bit to where Krishna starts describing the physical practice of yoga. He says, Shuchau deshe pratishtapya sthiramasanamatmanaha natya utritam natya nicham kailagya kushud. I can't say it. Kushodaram. Kusha, it means kusha grass. Tatraikagram manakritva jatachitandriya kriya upavishyasane yunjad yogamatma vishuddhaye. He says, to practice yoga, one should go to a secluded place and should lay kusha grass on the ground and then cover it with a deer skin and a soft cloth. The seat should be neither too high nor too low and should be situated in a sacred place. The yogi should then sit on it very firmly and practice yoga to purify the heart by controlling the mind, senses, and activities and fixing the mind on one point. So, Prabhupada points out in the purport that all these things are very difficult because you have to find a sacred place. Well, it's hard to find a sacred place today. He says sacred place refers to places of pilgrimage. In India, the yogis, the transcendentalists, or the devotees all leave home and reside in sacred places such as Prayag, Mathura, Vrindavan, Rishikesh, and Hardwar, and in solitude practice yoga where the sacred rivers like the Jamuna and the Ganges flow, but often this is not possible, especially for Westerners. So if you're in the Western world, everywhere there are slaughterhouses, restaurants where meat is served, petroleum is being extracted from the earth. It's very difficult to find a holy place. Prabhupada comments, the so-called yoga societies in big cities may be successful in earning material benefit, but they are not at all suitable for the actual practice of yoga. So I remember Srila Prabhupada was very critical of the Western style of yoga. Now, this may be because he was exposed from the very beginning of his sojourn in the United States to different yoga ashrams. He stayed for a while in upstate New York in the ashram of Dr. Mishra. And he could see, well, they're preaching impersonalism. They're saying that Krishna is not really Krishna. He's this impersonal force. And then they concentrate on sitting in strange postures, but they're not really vegetarians, and they like to go to these centers to meet women for relationships or men for relationships. So what's going on here? This is not what was recommended by Patanjali. Nothing could be further from the truth. So Prabhupada continues, one who is not self-controlled and whose mind is not undisturbed cannot practice meditation. Therefore, in the Brihad Naradiya Purana, it is said that in Kali Yuga, the present yuga or age, when people in general are short-lived, slow in spiritual realization, and always disturbed by various anxieties. The best means of spiritual realization is chanting the holy name of the Lord. Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Eva Kevala, Kalona Steva, Nasteva, Nasteva, Gatir Anyata. In this age of quarrel and hypocrisy, the only means of deliverance is chanting the holy name of the Lord. There is no other way. There is no other way. There is no other way. Kalo Nasteva, 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 Gatir Anyata. And that's a very powerful shloka, and I think I'm going to stop there. It's hard for me to just go through the entire 6th chapter in such a short period of time. But since the holy name of Krishna is the means, let me fire up my little harmonium one more time, and we can have another go. I'm trying to practice singing with the harmonium, so you can bear with me, and if you know the Hare Krishna mantra, you can say it with me, okay? I'm reading from so I'm using this melody, which was the melody we used to use in the Los Angeles temple for Sangasara Dava Nalalita Loka. And thanks once again to Pranashish and Tapanandini and some others who made this harmonium possible. Everybody. Krishna Krishna, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare So, Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm told next week is a big holiday. So it's hard for me to compete with, Christmas and families. People love to get together and celebrate with their families. And so I'm told we're not going to have a session next week. And then, of course, New Year's, Snovim Godam. Snovim Godam, everybody. Snovim Godam is, I think it's Russian for Happy New Year. So we're going to take a little vacation, I guess, for the Christmas and the Happy New Year. In Russia, New Year is a big deal. It's a big, 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 big festival. And I was present when in Thailand we celebrated the Russian New Year. And there was Dedushka Moroz, you know, Father Snow or Father Frost or something like that. Father Ice, the Iceman, who comes and hears the stories and prayers of the little boys and girls. He asked them, "What did you learn this year, little boy?" And the little boy will say, "I learned that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and we have to chant Hare Krishna and be happy." And then Dedushka Moroz gives him a little present. And it's very nice. And then after that, I'm told that the Russian Christmas is on October 7th, or I'm sorry, January 7th. Is that correct, Rajasundari? So I don't know when we will do this again. So I'm going to say goodbye for 2021 and goodbye to our little group here. And maybe we'll come back in the new year and try to finish off the 6th chapter of the Bhagavad-Gita. You know, someone asked Srila Sridhar, she said, "Well, you pretend to know the infinite, but that can't be, because if you could know the infinite, then you would be another infinite." And Srila Sridhar said, "That's very good, but if the infinite is infinite, this means he has the power to reveal himself to the finite, and he does so through the guru." And that man was silenced. So the Bhagavad Gita is the infinite, right? I don't know that we have the power to understand the infinite, but we have this little sangha to try to look at some ideas that are found in the great conversation between Krishna and Arjuna. And this is a great conversation. It eclipses the dialogues of Plato, the great works of the genius poets of humanity, like Dante's Inferno, or Don Quixote, or the discoveries of Einstein and modern science. You can find everything that you need in the Bhagavad Gita. So it was Henry David Thoreau, the famous American transcendental poet, who said, "Every morning I bathe my intellect in the stupendous cosmogony of the Bhagavad Gita." So I invite you to bathe your soul and your intellect in the teachings of the Bhagavad Gita, just as Govinda Maharaj and Sridhar Maharaj also invited us to do so. And I hope that you'll find some comfort and solace there. And I hope that in the new year, maybe I'll be invited to come back and share a few moments with my good friends, as esteemed colleagues and spiritual God brothers. Thank you all very much. Pranashish, Dandi Maharaj, Tungarasa Dasi, Satyabhama Didi, muchísimas gracias por estar con nosotros en vivo de Morelia, México. donde México ha sido muy bondadoso conmigo, me aceptó. Aquí vivo en exilio, pero es un exilio muy feliz porque comparto con mis amiguitos, los mexicanitos y mexicanitas, todo mi corazón. Así que mi más profunda bendición a todos ustedes. Praneshwari Devi Dasi and Tapanandini is not here with us right now, but she'll listen later. Harimati Didi of Ukraine, who I remember as Matahari, was my translator there in Kiev for the big Veda Life Festival. Thank you so much. It was great knowing you. And Shivashini, faithful friend, helper of the SOS Press, expert. She's, I'm sure, much more expert in Bhagavad-Gita shlok than I am, being a native speaker of India. Gadadhar Das, thank you for joining us. R.M. Das of Ukraine, Madhavilati from Odessa, and, you know, peace. And who else is here? There's Lilavati Didi and Mar, and then someone else, I don't know. It says Spanish and 3 language interpretations available on my screen. And of course, Vraja Sundari, thank you very much for organizing this and trying to keep the message going. I know it's very difficult for you and your children and living in Israel and the whole situation. But so peace and love, everybody. Hare Krishna. I love you. Goodbye. God bless. Dandavas. Gora Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Sri Ramaraj ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai.
All devotees ki jai.
Jai. Jai Mahayogi Prabhu ki jai.
Jai. Dandavat.
Dandavat. Happy birthday to you, Mahayogi Prabhu.
Happy birthday. Thanks for the balloons.
Yes, I wish you and everybody Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And we will see you next time on the 14th of January after all the holidays. So happy birthday, Jai.
Okay. 14th of January.
14th of January.
Be square.
Yes. Hare Krishna. Dandavat.